Good evening, everyone. I'm Father Brett here at Holy Cross, and we are here for our weekly Asked and Answered. And tonight we have a really good question. This is several parts to this question. Why is Easter a floating holy day? Why can't the church celebrate Easter on the same Sunday each year? The bishops have moved other holy days for convenience. Why not Easter? I think the essence of this question is, why is Easter, why do we schedule it out the way that we do, where it basically changes every year, the Sunday or even the month that it happens? And it has to do with a key difference between, where our Feast of Easter originates from and where a lot of the other feasts come from. So, Christmas. I don't know, I didn't look up the exact history of how Christmas came to be on December 25th, but it kind of came, and it is tied to our Lord's Nativity for reasons. And then you have, in connection with that, the Annunciation, which is we just celebrated a week ago on March 25th, because it's 9 months before Christmas to the day. 9 months, Mary conceived the Lord in the womb. 9 months later, he was born. So that makes sense. You have different things like the Epiphany, which is the traditional date of Epiphany is January 6th. Now we moved it to the Sunday for convenience, but it's still around the same date. And it's January 6th because it's the 12th night, so the 12th day after Christmas. And you have different things like that. The difference with Easter, because Easter is not necessarily traditionally tied with a date, but with a feast and with certain cosmological elements. Remember that when we celebrate the liturgy is not just something we do in our churches, and not just us happen in our churches. It is something where all of creation is taken up. When we go to Mass, when we participate in the liturgy, we are participating in a cosmological and a spiritual reality, one that encompasses and that we are participating in the Mass alongside all of creation in a very mystical and powerful way. All of creation participates, and so there are certain cosmological elements to the way that we celebrate Mass. One of those is the way that we determine when Easter follows, and it's also to do with the fact that Easter, as you recall, is the Christian Passover, and it's tied in some way to the Jewish Passover. The Jewish Passover and the Jewish feasts in general are all determined when they fall in our calendar year by the lunar calendar, by the Jews. The Jewish people have their own calendar based on the lunar cycle, the phases of the moon. And so what happens for the Jewish Passover is that Passover for them begins on what's called the 15th day of Nisan, which is it is one of the full moons within the spring season. And there's different, it's very complicated. I don't want to get lost in the details. But we have the same kind of ordering for how we determine when Easter falls. Easter always falls on the Sunday that follows, or that is, the full moon after March 21st. So March 21st is either March 20th or March 21st is when we say spring begins. That's because that's when the spring equinox happens, when the equidistance from the sun and all that stuff that we've learned about in physics and science class. And so in similar connection to the Jewish Passover that is based on the moon, we've kind of taken a little bit away from the way they determine their Passover, but it's kind of still connected in that we still kind of draw our attention to the moon, and that's to kind of remind us and connect that significance that as in the Jewish Passover, they remember how the Lord through Moses allowed them to pass through the Red Sea, how the Lord's angel passed over the people as they were celebrating the Passover. In the same way, we remember on Easter how the Lord passed over from death into life, into resurrection, and he won us salvation, that we might pass over through the waters of baptism and unclothe ourselves from death and sin and be clothed in life. And so this connection between the Passover and the lunar calendar is crucially important for how we determine Easter. That's why Easter is never connected to a date. And that's how, like, a lot of these other solemnities can kind of be, they are connected to a date. You know, Epiphany is a great example. It is connected to January 6th, but in order to allow, in the past, it seemed more appropriate sometimes for bishops to move Epiphany to the Sunday, and they were given that option because to allow people to be able to go to Epiphany Mass. Same thing can be said with the Ascension, which is based off the date of Easter, but is also in many places moved to Sunday for the sake of allowing people, you know, there's in the past it was made a decision that in order for more people to be able to go to the Mass of the Ascension, because it was a holy day of obligation, and it still is, they moved it to Sunday to allow more ease for people. But the reason we don't move Easter, and why Easter moves so frequently, and sometimes can be as early as in the middle of March, and as late as like the last week of April, I don't remember the exact dates, but is because it's so tied to that lunar cycle and keeping that kind of connection to the Jewish Passover, reminding us of what it is that we're entering into. And so this kind of a multi-layered question, and there's a lot more that I left out that we could get into, but I think that's the gist of it. It's just that keeping that connection with the Passover, it also means that this Easter Sunday, it moves with the years based on the way the moon falls and based on the way, you know, these different things fall. And so I hope that's helpful to understand the significance of that, both just naturally, but also spiritually, like keeping that spiritual kind of foreshadowing in the Passover of Israel and helping us to understand what it is we're entering into as we move into Easter. So I hope that is helpful and enlightening, and hope you all have a great night, and God bless you all.